Rehab school?
I don't think you can really. I don't think we can really answer that. Things happened. Welcome everyone to this Q&A. For me, the past year has been really a weird and cool year. I started this channel in April. I made a video about one certain Johnny Harris that blew up, and now it means that suddenly we're close to 100,000 followers, which is insane to me. So I'm happy you're all here, and I'm going to answer the questions you put on the community tab. Oh, quick thing before we start, this video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. Well, you have to ask me the questions.
Oh, I thought you were going to do a trial. What did you major in, and what was your thesis about? Where did you study?
My bachelor's I did in Amsterdam. I did 2 bachelors, one in history and one in philosophy. My master's I did in Utrecht. It was a master's of history of international relations. We mostly talked about how history has happened, how this impacts our current society. So for instance, how did the history of apartheid influence South Africa today? My thesis was about how one event or time in history can have a meaning for one people and a different meaning for another people. So if you go back to that South Africa example, there's this fort in Cape Town, which for the Dutch is a very good example of colonial history of the East India Company. But the local people, they find it a very good example of the repression under apartheid, because people would be locked there, tortured there, disappear from there. If you look at this certain place, what is the real history? It can differ for different people. And I did research on that in how we perceive the history of New York and how we perceive the history of Brazil, Dutch Brazil.
Tell us more about what you did professionally before starting YouTube.
I had a very hang-up about doing something about teaching in history, because every time when I would tell people I studied history, like at Christmas or whatever, there would always be persons saying like, "Oh, so what are you going to do? Are you going to be a teacher?" I really wanted to show you can do different things with history. So first I did a consultancy traineeship for 2 years. I would do consultancy for government institutions. One of the assignments was that I went to do research for this hospital in the Netherlands about their parking garage and how they could make the parking garage better and more user-friendly and stuff. So yeah, that kind of consultancy wasn't really for me. I did learn a lot about myself and personal development, so that was really good. But consultancy wasn't for me. I then thought, that international relations, I have to do something with that. I worked in this organization that helped companies and countries export more to Europe. So I was traveling to Rwanda and Egypt and through Europe, and that was really interesting. But in the end, I knew it wasn't really for me.
We'd love to hear how you got into videography as a historian and what made you make the jump into YouTube.
Okay, well, I was in a job that I knew wasn't really for me, and so I just started to pursue a dream that I had a long time, but I was really too scared to pursue, and that was just tell people stuff about history. So I just went on the street first with my phone to film myself talking about street names and what the history of street names is all about. I put it on YouTube. It was all in Dutch. I didn't really have a plan for it, but it did get me a job after, some time. It did get me a job for the City Archive in Amsterdam. They wanted me to make videos for them. That led to the idea that maybe I want to give this YouTube business a chance. And so I decided to start an English channel because, that is a lot more sustainable than talking about history in Dutch. And so I started that in April this year, and it's been going quite well, I can say.
Which important event in history do you think is the most misunderstood by the general public?
There's this one period that people talk about that gets widely misunderstood, and I think it's the medieval period. I used to think it was the most boring period when I was studying it, that people were backward. They were only thinking religious dogma, that everyone was dirty. But that's just not the case. First, it's a 1,000-year history, so saying that something is in the medieval time period really doesn't make any sense. And there were happening breakthroughs all over the place. It's a time that the Byzantine Empire reaches its apogee. It's a time that there's a lot of learning and development in the Middle East. So that one period is mostly influenced by later historians from the 1600s and also from the 18 and 1900s, looking back on that time and saying everything is shit. And, well, it's just not true.
What is your favorite historical moment?
For me, 19th century nationalism, mostly in Europe at first, is something that I find really interesting because you have these new nations, the Netherlands, France, Germany. These nations only happen to be that way through 1,000 coincidences. They're super new, but at the same time, these writers make out as if they're super old and that the roots of this nation lies back hundreds or thousands of years even. So for the Netherlands, there was this myth about how one people, the Batavieren, came into our country, and that's the starting point of the Netherlands. And that's just blatantly untrue. But trying to make all these different peoples into one nation and present them as if they've always been one nation, that's something I think we still do today.
Favorite broocher that is in Kaiser?
Definitely ciabatta. But then, of course, not the one that you can get in supermarkets. But when you're in Italy, in a small town, and you can have a fresh baked ciabatta.
Is it ciabatta?
Is it ciabatta? I don't know.
I actually want to check because at home we would always say ciabatta, but I don't know if it's
Ciabatta.
probably it's ciabatta.
See?
Yeah, sorry.
Ciabatta.
Your opinion on careers related to history, they generally get a bad reputation when it comes to money, low-paid jobs, etc. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
So I think this is a two-pronged question in a way. On the one hand, do you want your job to have to do something with history? Because I personally believe you can do anything with the degree of history, at least from my personal experience. It's a bit of a cliche, but I think it's really true. Then the other thing is working in the field of history, either in academia or writing about stuff or other things. And yes, some of those jobs are very poorly paid, and academia in itself, I think, is not really sustainable for a lot of people at the moment. If you look at it financially, maybe doing history is not something that really the profession that is paid best. But for me personally, I just find it so interesting that even though now as a YouTuber I don't earn that much money, the fact that I can actually go out and research and learn new stories is making it very much worthwhile for me.
What brings you the most joy in life?
Well, obviously hanging out with my beautiful girlfriend. And apart from that, two things. The first one is feeling super fit and cycling up big mountain. I love cycling, and the combination of the scenery and just dying on your bike to get up is really great. And the other thing is just reading about crazy stuff, crazy history that happened in the world, and all these weird stories that we have in our past. Just reading about them makes me very happy.
Nice. How do you come up with the topics of your videos?
I think that's actually the most easy of the process. I have a long list of things I want to cover. I read a lot, articles, books, whatever, and there will always be stuff that just stand out, that's just so weird and quirky and interesting that you want to make a video about. For instance, I recently learned that we've only been drinking coffee for about 400 or 500 years. Something that's so central to so many people in their everyday lives and has a huge cultural value that we've only been doing for a few hundred years. That just really piques my interest and makes me want to discover that topic and tell a story about that.
Very helpful.
I'll keep that in.
Okay. How did you meet your girlfriend?
We met in Rome. She was hiking in Italy and I was on a holiday in Rome. We met in a bar close to my hostel. And we had actually unwittingly seen each other in the museum, in a museum that day. So she approached me and asked me if she had seen me at the museum, which was true. Well, we were friends at first, and then she came to the Netherlands with her friends, pure coincidence, about a month and a half later. And then, well, things happened.
Do you have any favorite TV series?
Yes. The Wire, obviously, the best series of all time, and some people don't want to watch it because they're bored. Apart from that, I really, really, really love BoJack Horseman. It is super funny. It is very well made and written, so be sure to check that out.
How do you do your research?
I usually just start at Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a great source to start a subject. It does have drawbacks. Sometimes the information on there is not accurate, and it's also mostly run by dudes, so you won't find that much female history of any context there, even though, well, there is a lot. Next to Wikipedia, there's a ton of good options. You can use Google Scholar to search for articles. You can use JSTOR.org, where you can read up to 100 articles each month for free. Or you can actually find whole books on archive.org, and they just digitize them, and you can borrow them online and read them for free. If you combine these sources and find different sources, journals, or books about one topic, then you can also find different perspectives on that topic.
If you were to sit down for a dinner with any historical leader, who would it be and why?
There are many, but I think one that fascinated me early on was Bismarck. He's the Iron Chancellor. He's the one that brought Germany together, that unified Germany. And he really dominated European politics for decades in the late 1900s. He was a master strategist, a bit problematic on some things, but he really knew where the political fault lines were in Europe. And he's the one that famously predicted that the next big war in Europe would happen by something small happening in the Balkans. Which, well,
It did.
it did.
What's a historical fact you learned a while ago, but keep finding yourself thinking, whoa, that actually happened?
There are two things that come to mind. The first one is I found out why recently researching for a video, Story of Indonesian Independence Part 2, that you can check out right now at Nebula. Go check that out if you want to support the channel. The Dutch that were in 1913 celebrating 100 years of independence from French rule, independence from Napoleon, they wanted to throw a big party. And they were doing that in the Netherlands, but they're also doing that in their colony in the Indies. And they actually went to the local populace and asked them money to celebrate independence from a foreign power. Yeah, I just think that's fascinating. It really shows how complicated people's ideas about these colonies were and their position in these colonies. It's just a really interesting tidbit. A second thing is how print capitalism, a term coined by Benedict Anderson, formed how we use our language. If you think about it, in, say, 1500s France, there was not one French language spoken. But then the printing press came, and a lot of what they printed was actually in Latin at first. But, well, no one could read it, and they didn't really buy it. So they started to print in local languages, because that is where the most money was, because people would actually buy it, because, well, no one could read Latin. The fact that they chose certain dialects to print in made that those dialects would become the dominant dialect. So it's printing press capitalism from the 1500s that influenced what languages became dominant and what we think of as our national languages. Yeah, that's just... that kind of stuff really gets me up and going. I'm such a nerd.
That's so sick.
Yeah, you're also a nerd.
Is history driven more by ideas or material developments?
I don't think you can really. I don't think we can really answer that. I think it depends. And there's not a clear-cut answer, and sometimes it will be material developments, and sometimes it will be ideas. For instance, this history of colonialism started out by people just wanting spices, and they went all around the world to get these spices, and eventually that morphed into a colonial structure that also influenced how we think about other peoples, that made a new mindset about how to think about less developed peoples. So there you see really both things coming together. On the other side, you have things like the development of the Soviet Union. hugely influenced by ideas and also material developments. So I think my final answer is going to be, it depends, and they are closely intertwined.
Nice.
So I guess that's it. Hey there, if you made it to this part of the video, I have something that will surely be of interest to you. Last year for me was quite crazy. I also got this thing. So pretty. That was last year. But for the next year, I really want to make more and better videos. I want to hire people, an editor, people to do my animations, so I can just focus on the story and maybe be a bit more consistent in my output. I think it's sort of already happening, because my next video I've already finished. It's a story of Indonesian independence. The story of how all these different people from different islands rose up against their Dutch colonial masters and invented a nation in the process. The video will be online in 2 weeks, but you can watch it like right now, just after you've finished this one, because it's on Nebula. Nebula is a creator-owned streaming service that helps me to level up my production. It allows me to be one video ahead over YouTube, and it's all ad-free. But there's more. I know you guys like to watch Wendover, TLDR, and Johnny Harris. Well, they're all over there, and with some extra content. Wendover has 5 extra documentaries you can't find anywhere else, over an hour long in some cases. So how do you get access? Well, there's a special deal running right now. You can get a year of Nebula for just over $1 a month if you go to curiositystream.com. The sign-up page doesn't make it super clear, but if you go there, literally take the cheapest option, use my code, then you'll get a year of Nebula for free, together with CuriosityStream. This is a streaming service that has thousands of really good documentaries. So that is curiositystream.com/thepresentpast. And if you sign up right now, you get a discount of 26%, which means you can get 2 streaming services for just over $1 a month. I think that's a pretty sweet deal. As you maybe have seen, I've switched surroundings. I'm standing in Uganda right now, which this beautiful thatched roof, of course, indicates. So I'm gonna enjoy some nature. But you guys, you get your 2 streaming services. And I'll see you in the next one.